Can you see me? Hello? Brittany, can you see me? All right. Hey, do you see me? Just my picture? What picture? Of my home screen? Yeah. Oh, wait. You see me now? You see me in this shirt? You saw that? Great. Okay. Here we go. Let me pull my notes up and we are going to see how this goes. Do you see my screen? Okay, give me a second. I will screen share. All right, you there? Give me 1 second. I am trying to send something real fast. All right, here we go. My name is Justin Grimes. I'm a fourth year doctoral candidate in the College Student Affairs Administration program. And today I want to talk to you about my dissertation on motivating factors impacting Black males' pursuit of a doctoral degree in education. Give me 1 second as I'm pulling up some additional information. All right. So I won't go through the other steps of the quick overview, but as I scroll through these slides, you'll be able to see exactly what I was doing for this dissertation. And so let me get to what exactly I discussed or what I learned. All right. So as you can see from this information, my study was about these 7 Black men. enrolled in different programs here at Bridgetown University. And so what I want to get to is what was happening in the major themes. So here are the 6 major things that came from this research. And I'm going to just give you an idea of give you the big idea, as well as implications of things that we can do going forward. So, okay. First, research questions. I start out with this research study with 2 particular research questions. What factors did Black male doctoral students name to be the primary motivators for their pursuit of a doctoral degree? And how did race and gender impact Black male doctoral students' motivation throughout their educational journey? So the first main point. Here I talk about understanding Black men's motivation for pursuing a doctoral degree. And I'll go through each of these real quickly. So one of the earliest and the most consistent things that we're talking about is Black men are pursuing PhDs because they both have their family support and they're also looking to further support their family. A lot of this is also tied to having greater social mobility. So Black men who have PhDs are able to gain more social educational capital, as well as some more social capital and cultural capital as a result, to be able to do the things that they really want to do going forward in their careers. And so one of the things the participants talked about was having, I go to the white school to learn whiteness and the tools of whiteness to be able to engage in a world that is centered on a white majority normalizing behavior. A lot of what they're doing in pursuing a PhD is about credentialing. So it's what I get as a result of being able to have this PhD. And that's, for the most part, is a few things. One of it's about having a seat at the table. It's also about having a voice and having some power behind that voice. Some of them felt like they could achieve things without a PhD, but a PhD gave them a greater opportunity to gain more access to stuff, whether that be access to specific rooms, board rooms, or they want to make certain changes in policies or strengthen their research agendas and such. And ultimately, all this is wrapped under wanting to honor their ancestors. Black men in this study talked about at one point how they recognized that they're going from a lineage of ancestors who weren't even allowed to read and write. And then those who were kept out of school because of segregation and the inability to be able to be given access to it. And then another thing that was kind of driving some of these decisions was their fear of failure, really kind of this piece of perfectionism. Black men talked about how they felt like they had to be the perfect individuals. They always had to prove something, not only to themselves, but they had to prove stuff to other people. And this was both an internal and an external thing, where they were seeking out this validation throughout their process. And how this impacts their pursuit of a degree is they've always had some level of ability to be able to achieve. And what's interesting was that the same thing, the same fear that has created challenges and can be seen as very deficit with some of the narratives and stuff, which I'll get into, is also the same thing that's driving them and a motivating factor. So there's kind of this dualism in this fear of failure. And the biggest thing that these Black men are trying to do is deal with some social justice issues. So they're trying to correct some type of social inequity and equity that they've experienced throughout their lives. Secondly, Black men conception and a role model, when they thought about, when I asked them the question of, when I asked them the question of who pursues a PhD, the Black men talked about Black people in general, all types of folks. When I asked them, when they thought about their conceptualization of who pursues a PhD, in their photos that I asked them to provide me, majority of them were men. But when I asked them who's supporting, who's inspiring their decisions, it was always Black women. So Black women were the ones who helped them to be able to learn what it was about getting into a PhD program. So they told them about the GRE. They told them about a CV and updating their resume and specific points to put on there, and writing a writing statement or a personal statement. And they told them faculty were looking for and what to do. And these are folks who were who are currently in education. Some were not in higher education, but many of them were, as well as these were the individuals who were supporting them throughout their process to complete their doctoral degree. And so that really was significant, the roles that Black women play in this process. And there are this interesting thing that was happening in the classroom where when there were when there were two or more black women present, black men felt like they didn't have as much power or voice, that they couldn't speak up as much for themselves or advocate for themselves, or that they, because of fear of being called an angry black man, or that they were being disobedient, or they were disruptive in the classroom environment. But they seemed to have this issue only when they talked about feeling powerless with black women, which I'll get into that here in a little while. When they look at one of the greatest struggles they had was trying to figure out a way to discuss their identity as being black, different than being a man. It was easier for these participants to talk about being black than it was for them to be able to talk about being a man. And real quickly, I want to go back to a point, to the previous point, of something that stood out to me, a quote that really encapsulates why these black men are pursuing. And so what they said was education and social justice combats racist practices. And this is one quote from one of the participants, Jason. And what Jason said was, education and social justice can combat racist practices and can improve the social mobility because I want to make more money to provide for the family. And I think wealth in the black community starts with wealth in the black family. So the more money I make, the more the black community can make. And that's how I look at it. I don't look at it as me getting a PhD for me. I look at it as me getting a PhD for me to benefit other people who do not have their PhD and hopefully inspire them to get their PhD as well. So to the third point about this aspect of understanding identity and different social identities and how that impacts their pursuit or their motivation, black men were highly driven by the fact that they knew their blackness carried a level of fear from other individuals and curiosity, as well as a lot of questioning of who they were. But they struggled to identify the ways that privilege showed up for them in their male identity. And so that was something that showed up. Point number 4, black men referenced to many white people is what they call sub-others. And so what this is really is the point says here, sub-othering is this thing that white people do where they classify black men who are pursuing education as non-stereotypical, formally educated black men who have been socialized and understanding and performing whiteness and respectability. And so what's really happening to me, what I found is that this is rooted in microaggressions and meritocracy, where the assumption is because these black men have been socialized in a white world, they basically know how to operate and act in this space. And they won't be challenging in this space to cause problems. They're not quite like the stereotypical black male that people are marginalized. And one participant said, it's like you're not being called a nigger, you're being called a sub-other, where you're not the traditional black person that I'm marginalizing, but you're a little bit different because you've been socialized in whiteness in this white culture, particularly in the academy, enough that you know how to operate in it. And as long as you're able to perform that whiteness, and both in your writing as well as in your everyday use of language and conformity, then you're not going to be seen as an issue. Sub-othering ignores the ways racism not only affects perceptions about black men, but also how it impacts white people's use of credentialing to give black men opportunities and name how black men are supposed to show up in this space and accept that. Now, majority of what I want to talk about today are the implications of what we can do. So what I'm asking for institutions, graduate school administrators, student affairs, and graduate faculty to consider is the following. Number 1, to review and restructure admissions policies and recruitment efforts. Messages are being communicated to black men from websites to who comes to recruitment fairs to seeing issues of racism where they named feeling that experiencing Confederate flags and what that symbolism means to them differently than maybe what was projected out there. And so they felt like, and one participant said, I knew Bridgetown was racist. I just didn't know what type of racism I was experiencing, whether it was going to be physical lynchings or it was going to be microaggressions, but some way they expected racism to exist. So consider what messages are being conveyed. Also, consider the ways the institution has marketed and discussed black men's presence on the campus. Many of them talked about trying to fight through these realities for some white people who think that they're only here to be athletes. And so being questioned on the bus, being questioned in different locations on campus, or why are you here? And so you're here for this. And so there's just kind of this unsureness that they experience. They also recognize that one of the things I also want to hit on is that recognize that many of these Black men are coming from institutions or communities where they're not the minority. Even if they are, their experiences on these campuses come with them. Plus, the messages are being communicated to them about their institutions. My suggestion is this: when you do recruitment weekends, pair Black men with other Black students to get the experience. And this is both grad and undergrad, to get a holistic idea of what it's going to be like to be their student, as well as pair them with people with different social identities so they can gain more perspective about what it's like to be a Black student. I also think you should consider pairing up with other offices who currently do this work around supporting Black students in particular, and then Black men. And find ways to be transparent about the diversity issues that are present for Black men, both on campus as well as in the community. Secondly, design and develop programs on addressing and supporting Black men. I think it's important for institutions to really think about ways that they can support and offer that to Black men. And since support is not always financial, sometimes the support they're looking for is community. A lot of it is community. So, and finding spaces within the College of Education to talk about the unique needs of Black men. So having a Black male student organization, having a Black male think tank. And so if you're having a diversity and inclusion workshop coming up, having a specific time set aside for Black men to gather to talk about their concerns, and have some faculty discussions if there's Black faculty members that can also kind of serve as not necessarily liaisons or moderators of the discussion, but definitely be able to offer some additional context for what happens for them from the faculty and administrators as well, so that we can get a more total picture as to what's happening and can create greater support. And one of the things that I found is that often there's a lack of resources given to Black men because it's informed based on statistics and deficit narratives, which say because they aren't successful, they don't need special attention. And I'm saying that Black men aren't in need of special attention. What their need is equitable solutions that include them as valuable paying students. Not to mention, white faculty and institution members need to name their concerns for themselves about Black men and provide accurate resources, time, and support. Furthermore, Black men benefit from having mentors who have been in doctorate processes. So I'm also saying find ways to connect these Black men who are interested in pursuing with alums who have already went through the process of completing their PhD, particularly in their program or in another program, and talk about their process and how they navigated, what challenges they had, and what was it like for them and what motivated them throughout the process to get done. Also, I want to talk about changing the narrative around expectations around Black men from seeing them as a problematic group to a very driven group. They've already entered in as having already completed a bachelor's and a master's program, dealing with a level of experiences around racism and imposter syndrome. So this is just adding to that. So find ways to consider them as very driven individuals. A lot of this is predicated on notions of them being problematic is existing a lot in the academy. And Black men felt this internal pressure and motivation to fight against these notions that they're academically inferior to white people, but if their only worth on college campuses, as I talked about earlier, was to be an athlete. However, there's so much more. Consider how you interact with Black men in professional and personal spaces and are addressing these issues that concern them. Black men are in need of less correction and more about compassion. Black men have exerted a lot of energy to a process of finding a happy medium of being heard, disagreeable, and respected that isn't named, and find ways to work through that while being treated by feeling like they're being treated as invalidated, accusatory, and angry individuals. But this process requires time and vulnerability from all ends and for all people to really address. Number 4, understand Black men's motivation for pursuing doctorates about family, finances, credentialing, and social justice. These are the things that I talked about on the previous slide. And so really what's happening is Black men are looking to find ways to rewrite and dismantle notions about their existence, particularly in the academy, and discuss how they're able to achieve and fight through racial inequalities or other issues that are happening. In addition, they're also trying to rewrite the narratives for their community, both in education and society. because Black men will be able to do more with a doctorate than they will do without one. The diverse faculty institutions I'm looking for are coming from doctoral students. So I had this thought that came from the research, is that in the research, none of the Black men talked about what motivates them to pursue or what they want to do. One of the questions was, what do you hope your doctorate allow you to achieve? And none of them talked about wanting to become faculty members, which I think was very puzzling, though it was Black faculty who had such a great inspiration to help them stay motivated, and Black faculty who even inspired them to pursue. So there's something some work to be done there, where you have to consider, to me, you have to consider that the Black faculty that you're going to recruit, or institutions are trying to recruit to diversify their staff and to not have espouse diversity, but stuff that's actually real, is to consider the doctoral students as that future workforce. This is where you're pulling from your workforce, is from these group of Black men. So if you want to get Black men to consider faculty roles, you also have to currently have Black faculty, but you also got to push, you got to, encourage them to do so. And so Black men talked about how they were not encouraged to consider faculty roles, or some of the challenges they've seen their Black faculty members go through that really kind of caused them to pause. So they want to go more into administrative roles, or change policies, or deal with stuff, government. And so consider what's happening there with Black men's, ability to go consider faculty roles. And also, a lot of responsibility is placed on Black women and Black faculty members to do the work of supporting and advocating for Black male success. And a lot of this work needs to be rewarded in changes in tenure. I know these conversations happen where if you want to reward service, it has to be a part of tenure process. So I think it should be a part of that process. In addition, you should recognize the faculty members and people who are doing this work. And I also say that it needs to be the work of not just Black faculty who have to constantly burden the support of these individuals, of Black men, because they too are already dealing with their own issues of racism and discrimination and genderism and a lot of other things that are happening in their processes, that they also have to take extra effort out, or extra time out, to extend more effort to help another group. And my last point is, consider the greatest resource to help Black men pursue PhDs are Black women. And so my argument is, if you want Black men to pursue PhDs, you need Black women also pursuing PhDs. You need them also in administrative roles. You need them in faculty roles, because what happened was Black women were the greatest impact on Black men's pursuit. Much like the other requests, institutions need to recruit, retain, and support Black women across these institutions. These women help teach Black men the game or the process to get in, support them, and mentor them. Regardless of the classroom interaction, Black men are likely to stay motivated and finish as long as Black women are present. In addition, Black men must also support Black women in the ways that they desire to be supported. Black women are already, as I stated, enduring their own issues of racism, genderism, intellectualism, and more, while still being asked to support Black men. And with that being said, if you have any questions, please let me know. I hope that's working. Can you see me? If so, if you're on Google, or you can see, oh, you can't, because you can't chat in there. But anyway, I can see that stuff. So let me know your feedback. How long was it? What was I fumbling over? I know I said a lot of ums and rolling between my notes, as well as between what I had on the PowerPoint slides. Would you prefer to see the PowerPoint slides? Would you prefer to see my face? But I think in the actual defense, I'm going to have the computer positioned in a way where you can see me and then see the slides in the background. And that's what I'm hoping to do. So thank you. Mama E, if you're watching, hello. I hope you're having a good day. Tamika, thank you for watching. Brittany, thank you for watching. Look forward to your feedback.